Dear Diary, after 12 silent years, I am finally ready to share with you my difficult diagnosis story, the beginning of my diabetic life. I was 10 years old and away on a school trip when my symptoms quickly started to show. I didn't think too much about it at the time, but I became incredibly thirsty and horrendously dehydrated. I needed to pee every 5 minutes, I was lethargic, terribly tired, and was drastically losing weight. All of these symptoms are signs of type 1 diabetes, and if left untreated can cause coma or even death. When I returned home, my parents knew almost instantly that something wasn't right. They took me straight to the doctors. But unfortunately, my symptoms were mistaken for a virus instead, and I was told to go home and rest. I tried, but I couldn't get a single minute of sleep in because every single part of me was throbbing. I was weak and incredibly tired. Overnight, my condition rapidly deteriorated. I remember feeling scared at first, but as time slowly passed, I couldn't think about anything other than the fact that I felt like I was dying. That's because I was. Over the next few hours, I became violently sick. I was dehydrated and frail. No matter how much water I tried to drink, none of it was staying in my body. Even now, I can still see the painfully ill little girl slumped over the toilet seat, crying for it all to go away. But it didn't go away, and it never will go away. By now, my mom was in a state of panic. She had that gut-aching motherly instinct that told her something wasn't right, that it was more than just a virus and that her little girl was seriously ill. My mom thought it had to be type 1 diabetes, but our family and friends confidently reassured her that she was wrong, that we couldn't have that much bad luck, as my brave mom was fighting cancer at the same time. She was battling for her life while worrying and trying to save mine. Now convinced and running out of options, my mom asked our neighbor to come over to the house and test my blood sugar as her daughter was also a type 1 diabetic. I can still see the heartbreak and horror on my mother's face when she read the results. My blood sugar was so high, the meter couldn't even read it. A non-diabetic's blood sugar should be between 4 to 8 millimoles. Mine was higher than 40. My mom ran to the phone and called the hospital begging for someone to help. The nurse on the phone told her we didn't have time to wait for an ambulance anymore. We needed to get to the hospital immediately and I needed to be kept awake. By now, I was drifting in and out of consciousness, and my hazed memory only let me recall certain moments of that terrifying car journey. When we got to the emergency room, my mom flung out of the car, scooped me up in her arms, and ran towards the door. I remember her screaming for help while a sea of people rushed towards me. A man with a broken leg who was sitting in his wheelchair instantly lifted himself out so that my mother could place me down. I was rushed into the emergency room and placed on a bed. I remember trying to find the strength to cry, to ask, what is wrong with me? To ask if I was gonna die, but I couldn't even do that. Within minutes, doctors began inserting tubes, wires, needles, and hooking me onto machines. Dozens of doctors, consultants, and nurses were huddled at my bedside with machines screaming in my ears. At 10 years old, I knew that I was in trouble, and I was terrified. The doctors explained that my blood sugar and ketone levels were too high to read, and this is where it gets scary. I was in the late stages of diabetic ketoacidosis, DKA for short, a life-threatening complication for type 1 diabetes. DKA occurs when there is not enough insulin in the body, which is produced by the pancreas and causes your blood to turn acidic and therefore poisonous. When this happens, an immense strain is put on your body's organs. Your heart, lungs, and kidney can all fail, which was what was happening to me. You can fall into a coma, and death can be a very realistic outcome. The ER doctors were able to stabilize me and transfer me to a children's intensive care unit where my dad asked the doctors, "Is my little girl going to be okay?" Their reply was, "Sir, I can't tell you that. Your daughter is in critical condition and the next 24 hours will be crucial." When I look back on that day, I feel sad, but more than anything, sad for my parents. I cannot even imagine how they felt being told that their little girl might not make it through the night. For any parent, it's something you never want to experience for yours or anyone else's young child. Seeing the sheer pain embedded in my mom's face is something I find difficult to erase. It's something I'm gonna carry with me forever. The rest of that night was a blur, a painful, emotional blur. When I woke up, I realized that I was living what seemed at the time a terrifying nightmare, one that you couldn't escape or run from. It was a nightmare in a constant loop, and I was in the middle of it all. It was overwhelmingly real and intense, but as the days went on, slowly, I regained my strength. Before I was released from the hospital, the nurse told my mom that I'd need injections for the rest of my life. It's a burden that comes with every type 1 diabetic. We live in the constant pattern of insulin injections, carefully managed diets, and constant monitoring of daily blood glucose tests. No matter how hard we maintain a healthy lifestyle or exercise, it will never go away. I am reminded of this nearly 10 times a day when I'd look down at my pin-pricked finger and stare into a machine to tell me if I'd need to inject myself. I've struggled my entire life to accept this lifelong condition. I carried the weight of the world on my shoulder, but now, after years of anger, hurt, and shame, I've learned to be proud of every bit of who I am. I am a fighter, and nearly 12 years later, I feel stronger than ever. I am here, I am alive. And although I have a condition that will never go away, it's okay. I'm okay. I'm not ashamed or embarrassed to shout out from the rooftops about my condition, because I won't let it take any part of me away again. I am brave, resilient, and unstoppable. And if you think type 1 diabetes or any other disease is ever going to hold you back, my God, are you wrong.